Now that we have a good idea on how to create some 3D bodies, we also have a number of transform tools that we can use to move around, translate, rotate, make copies of, and in other words, just transform our bodies or sketches however we may like. So on my left hand side, if I just tap on my transform tools, I have a number of tools here that I can use to transform my bodies and sketches, and we'll take a look at each of these tools in the next few lessons. So right at the top I have the Move, Rotate, Scale tool. And this transform tool is probably the one I use most frequently. It's very, very helpful and useful. And from here I can select really any shapes, sketches, or groups that I'd like to transform. So what I can do here, let's say if I just tap once on my design here, notice I see a triad pop up, and that's the triad I'll be using to translate up or down or to the side or rotate and so on. But notice that if I just tap once, it's just highlighting a single face of my design, whereas if I were to double tap, it should select the entire body. So of course, if I'm looking to move or transform my entire body, I'd like to do the double tap here and make sure the entire body is selected. So from here, of course, I can use this triad to translate or rotate my object. But before I take a look at that, I may notice I have this purple dot in the middle of my object here, and this is my pivot point. So this is extremely useful. Essentially, I will move this anywhere on my object to create my pivot point. And so the pivot point is useful because this is essentially what I'll be translating or rotating about. So for example, if I set my pivot point here in the kind of dead center of my design, I can of course use any of the triad arrows to translate my design up or down as I may need. I can of course give it an exact value. Let's say I'd like to translate it 500 millimeters up. And of course I could translate in any direction just the same. And we can see it's a very, very easy process to translate my object here. I'll just undo a few times. Of course, rotate works in a very similar manner. I can just tap to rotate anywhere in my triad here and give a specific value as well. Let's say I'd like to rotate -90 degrees. Now here is where we can really see the use of that purple pivot point. So for example, notice that I'm rotating about that purple pivot point, or the center of my design here. But if, for example, I change that pivot point, and I'm going to now put it maybe on this outer portion of my design, now when I rotate, I can see that I'm no longer rotating about the center of my design, but now I'm rotating about that outer portion of my design. Finally, you will see the yellow icon on my triad. I can just tap and drag on the yellow icon there, and that is used to scale up or down my design. So this can be very useful in, say, 3D printing when we may need to scale up or down one of our 3D models. I can specify exact values there as well. Let's say I'd like to scale this design up 1.5. And now I've just scaled up that design. Also notice that the pivot point will affect your scaling as well. So with the pivot point in my origin there, notice I'm scaling about that origin point. Whereas if I move the pivot point over to the side of my design here, and again scale, now notice I am scaling about not the center of my design, but the outer portion of my design here. Of course, once I'm happy with all my transformations, I can just tap the Done check to finish them off. In the next few lessons, we'll learn a number of other transform tools.